its true sense. And I think some of the experiments that have gone on, that have happened in Gujarat as well as Rajasthan in the past 15, 20 years show that if you do nothing else, if you just fix the groundwater, then rivers will probably become again the perennial state. So they will go back to the pre-development days. And I have a colleague who is going to present
I'm going to talk about the work that was done by Aga Khan Rural Support Program in the Meghal River Basin. This is a small coastal river basin in Junagadh district, less than 500 square kilometers. The impact of this work, we wanted to understand how the hydrology of the river basin has changed, if at all. We wanted to understand the socio-economic impact, and we also wanted to say something about the institutions that have been created by AKRSP with the help of the local community. Or rather, I would say institutions facilitated by AKRSP, not created by them. Last 15, 20 years now, many of you, I'm sure, are aware of the movement to recharge groundwater wells, the movement to build check dams that has happened in all the 7 districts of Saurashtra. So this forms part of what can be called a spontaneous collective action. The farmers started this river basin, and instead of collecting the runoff here and then distributing it in a small command area through a dam and canal network, the runoff of the river basin has been more democratically distributed throughout the river basin. So that's why we can call it, instead of all for some, and the move has been to some for all. So, like I said, we did 3 kinds of studies here. We did some hydrological studies where we collected rainfall runoff data. AKRSP had collected data on all the structures value of output from agriculture. And then we looked at the institutional and cultural aspects. So I will briefly talk about all 3 of them. I will focus on the cultural aspects because the river used to be perennial at one time, and the primary inspiration or the motivation why people came together and worked with AKRSP was to revive the Meghal River, which used to be perennial in earlier times and now was flowing for only 3 or 4 months in a year. So I'm going to skip over the details, but this is the river basin, and there are 3 major public dams. The Chandravadi Dam, and then with the recharge that happens through these check dams, the groundwater is benefited, and through that there is huge socio-economic impact in terms of the changes in the agrarian economy. We collected rainfall data. We asked the farmers what was the area, the yield, the price of all the different crops that they used to grow in 2000-2001 before the intervention, and 2010-11, which is near to the end of the intervention. And then these are the results we got. In nominal terms, the total economy or the gross value of output from these 54-55 villages, this increase could have happened for various reasons. It was not only AKRSP's work. Part of this increase is also because the prices of the crops have increased over these 10 years. Part of this increase is because farmers have moved from low value crops to high value crops now that they have greater surety about having irrigation. Also, we noticed that the cropping intensity increased from 1.66 to about 2, and that was a big impact. So, at this nominal level, there is about 13% annual growth in the river basin. But like I said, part of this growth is because prices have increased. So we try to take that impact out. We calculated after taking out the impact of inflation. Now, what part of this growth can be attributed to the work done by AKRSP or to the water harvesting movement in particular, which is where we use the values for artificial recharge that we had calculated from the hydrology model. We assume that All the artificial recharge that is happening in the river basin is because of the additional structures created. And then we attributed that percentage of the growth to these structures. And then part of the artificial recharge is happening is very often when a new project, whether it be from the government department or even from NGOs, goes into a village and they talk about water conservation, they talk about water harvesting, they kind of impose their own values which may be alien to the local community. In this fact, and to have Jasu Baba go and talk to other people in other villages, talk to them about the fact that all these 50 villages are sharing the water resources of one river basin, which very often people may not understand or may not realize. And that the revival of this river. Then at the beginning, before the project even started, I don't know if it was part of the project or just before the project, you had this Meghal Padyatra just after the start. So this was the Meghal Padyatra. It had representation from I think 40 or 42 of the that people took. So it started up here in the catchment area near the village Ajab. And then passing through all these villages, taking people from here. Then another batch started the next day from here, and then all of them met up in Khorasa, and then went up to Chorwad. I think this whole 3-day, 4-day event was also very critical in making people realize, that they are part of one river basin or one river family. That there is interdependence between these villages. It's not that one village can do whatever they want without affecting others or without being affected by others upstream of them. So this whole realization that they're part of one river basin and the creation of this river basin identity was critical in making this experiment a success. I already briefly talked about Boriband, but an interesting aspect of Boriband is that normally you would say, okay, AKRSP worked there for 10 years, now the work is over, what would happen now? So all the check dams have already been constructed. It's very unlikely that you would need to create a lot of new check dams in the coming years. But Boriband to a particular schedule. Otherwise, one village might take up too much of the runoff and the other village might not get anything, and there might be conflicts. So this is an annual activity that happens which requires coordination at the river basin level. And we thought because of this activity, this kind of collaboration between villages, collaboration between people from different villages might continue if this keeps running. It's already been more than a year since we did this study, so maybe Apurva can talk a bit more about what's happening now, and I will.
Under the Prime Minister's scheme, that 20-point program, this year also it is included water quality of all the rivers. All the rivers can be restored. This is the one of the very important points. These are the constitution of the water quality assessment authority. All this.
9th May 2001 through a gazette notification. Okay. Mandate of this authority is to direct agencies to standardize water quality monitoring methods, ensure proper treatment of wastewater to restore the water quality of surface and groundwaters, take up R&D activities related to water saving. Step number 2, water quality monitoring. How this can be monitored? So water quality monitoring to acquire the knowledge of existing water quality of the water body. GPCB is taking samples from the various sources, various ponds, underground data also we are taking samples and lines. And quantity information. So acquiring the flow data from the central model of mass balance to estimate the direction available in different seasons. Eventually,
made by study on GPCB's work on water quality. So I think this has set out the basic groundwork for discussion in the next session on in which we have several panelists sharing their viewpoints and opinions on this. I want to thank all the 3 panelists for making very useful presentations. With this, I bring this session to a close. Thank you very much.
I'd like to request PC Yas sir to please turn the memento to the chairperson for ending such a wonderful session chair in good place.
So, we have this conference 5 years down the line or 6 years down the line, we'll have more than 50% of Gujarat in urban areas rather than rural areas. It's very different from the rest of the country. So, issues of managing rivers are not only from the agrarian perspective, but from what we call the urban. What do you do about coastal areas where there are going to be huge infrastructure projects coming up, which are ports are coming up, SEZs are coming up. This is a whole new set of challenges which states like Gujarat and more states are going to face. And somewhere the funny part of this discussion in this country is that when they talk about industrialization, SEZ industry, how much water is going to be? Where is that water going to come from? Is it going to be groundwater or surface water? Suppose you have a nuclear power plant. What does it do to issues around that area? How does that waste disposal, how will that be managed? What does it do to groundwater in that area? So how do you balance this without harming future generations? I think it's a major water challenge for this state and for the country. So I think so we can.
Kindly spoken by Mr. Abdul Boza, the subject is very large, and we have to make very epitome sort of points, so that we people don't have the concept of the flowing river at all. Our politicians always shout that Gamnu Pani Gamma, Sinnu Pani Sinma, and even if single drop of water flows into ocean, they say that it's a criminal wastage of water. I disagree so. I disagree because we take the seeds of devastation as today's development. Third point, we have made so many legal provisions regarding the pollutions that this must standard of pollution must executive machinery to get them honored. There is nobody to oversee. In Ankleshwar, the industrialists used to bury their effluent because they can't now drain it into the open rivers. Blueprint of the development prepared, and only fitting into the blueprint, industrial development should be allowed. Only within the bounds of the blueprints. It should not be the demand based. When Maruti Suzuki has come, it has chosen the area surrounding Kadi, and we have given them the land thereover because it was there.